Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today on business continuity, running your business during a global crisis. The webinar today will be recorded and everyone will receive a copy of the recording and the presentation after the webinar takes place. If you have any questions, please direct it to the relevant speaker in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. I'm going to pass you on to our moderator for today's panel discussion, Khalil Machanta, the Senior Associate at Kennedy's. Hi, Khalil.
Hi, Eleni. Thank you very much for your introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Big Five webinar on business continuity in times of crisis. Having a business continuity plan is key for the success of any business, and fortunately enough, we have today with us three experts in the field who will talk us through the ins and outs of continuity plans, mitigation measures, and opportunities from both a global as well as an industry-focused perspective. I have with me on this panel Suhas Inamdar. Suhas is an electrical engineer with masters in financial management. He has over 32 years of experience in manufacturing industries and facilities management in India as well as in the UAE. Currently, he is working as head of planning and technical support in Wasl Properties, a leading real estate developer in Dubai. On the personal front, his passion is to write motivational fiction stories and has published 8 books so far. I have also Michael Lawrence. Michael has over 30 years of experience in the construction industry. He has a degree in civil engineering and an MBA from the University of Reading. He has worked for some of the leading project management consultancies and has spent over half of his career working on international projects, including infrastructure projects to multi-site portfolios for small retail outlets. Michael takes appointment as arbitrator and is registered at both DIAC and DIFC arbitration centers in Dubai. Last but not least, I have Nikki Dobrano. Nikki works as a chartered quantity surveyor for a leading real estate developer in Abu Dhabi. He has a master's degree in civil engineering and a bachelor's degree in commercial management, as well as a postgraduate degree in international arbitration. Nikki is a member of the Chartered Institute of Building in the UK, as well as in Dubai. As Eleni has noted at the beginning of this session, please note that we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So please, if you do have questions, place them in the chat box along with the panelists to whom you wish to address your question. We start the first session with Suhas Inamdar. Suhas will discuss the relevance of a business continuity plan in times of crisis and how such plans are implemented when facing a total shutdown of virtually all aspects of the global economy. Suhas will also address the impact of COVID-19 on doing business in the future, the need to adapt and strategies that businesses can consider in the next 3 years. There is obviously a silver lining to every crisis, and Suhas will talk us through the corporate lessons learned from COVID-19. Without further ado, I will now hand over to Suhas. On to you, Suhas.
Thank you, Khalil. Thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. Hi to all my panelists, Michael and Nikki. Good afternoon to all of you, and good afternoon to all the attendees who have joined this Big Five webinar. Thank you so much for taking your time to join this webinar. Business continuity plan is basically, in very simple language, it's a plan B of any company, of any organization. It is a preparedness of the organization to deal with certain unforeseen situations. If some calamity, if something doesn't go as per plan, then what is the plan of action that the company is willing to take? And there are some risks which are identified in the business, in the normal day-to-day operations, and those risks are mitigated. There is a plan of mitigation for those risks which are perceived. And this is what is a business continuity plan. Over the years, the business continuity plan has been reviewed, refined, and fine-tuned to the extent that almost everything was thought to be covered in this business continuity plan. The most common things which are covered are like the fire, the earthquake, flood, the tsunami, and all these things. So whenever any of these eventuality happens, what should be the action of the organization is what is the business continuity plan. And it worked well till last 3 months. In the last 3 months, there is something happened which really put everything on its head or turned upside down. The COVID-19, it really turned all the business continuity plans on its head. Many of the business continuity plans did not work in this COVID-19 scenarios. in fact, it might come as a surprise to some of you that only 11% of the Fortune 500 companies were partially covered to take on the effect of the COVID-19. Now, when you say the effect of COVID-19, to get to the enormity, the magnitude of this COVID-19, how much impact it had globally on all the businesses, the people, the world, the society, the humanity, the human race itself. There are some 3-4 key statistics or indicators which will probably give an idea how big is the COVID-19. One, as of today morning, the number of the people who have been infected has crossed 3 million, and the number of deaths has happened is more than 200,000. So this is really big. Other factors can be the COVID-19, the magnitude of COVID-19 can be gauged from the fact that almost all the aircrafts are grounded today. There are some airline companies which have even gone bankrupt. The airports, major airports, the big airports like the Heathrow, the Dubai airport, the Mumbai airport, the Changi airport, all are closed, they are shut down. The places of tourism, the internationally renowned and reputed places of tourism, like say the Burj Khalifa, the Eiffel Tower, and the Taj Mahal, and you name anything, everything is closed. So much that even the places of religious pilgrimage of all religions, they are also shut down. So this is something really big that COVID-19 is currently taking its toll. And a stark realization that has come to all the organizations is that they were not really prepared to handle this scenario, and rightly so, because they never imagined, no one really imagined that this will be the scenario just say 6 months ago. People would have laughed if someone said that the whole human race will be sitting inside their houses like either in a zoo or in a prison. But this is a fact. Today we are all doing that, and honestly we do not know how long we are going to do that. So this is an unprecedented situation, and this is also a time for us to review and to think what actions need to be taken to enhance the business continuity plans further if such an epidemic has to happen again in future. So this is just a small analysis of what business continuity plan needs to adapt in future in such pandemics. The first thing that comes to mind is that the business continuity plan all along that we discussed all the scenarios was something internal to the organization. That means how the systems and processes within the organization would continue to function. The most common scenarios were like if the infrastructure is not available, it's shut down or something, or if the IT infrastructure is closed. These are the two broad scenarios which worked all along. However, the business continuity plan also needs to now focus on its vendors and its suppliers, because your plans may well be in place, your processes may still be working fine, but if you do not get raw material for your operations, how are you going to run the business? And this is what has happened today. I mean, the whole supply chain, the logistics is stopped. I mean, if in the manufacturing, if there is A and B and C, A is the raw material, B is the processing, and C is the finished product. So if the B, everything is fine, there is no fault for them, nothing is wrong with them. But if A stops and then there is nothing to come for the B, then they will be hampered. So as a realization, it's something like ISO 9000. When ISO 9000 certification came, it brought with it a kind of a concept which said that you have to manage not just your quality, but even the quality of your suppliers. So the base raw material also has to be equally good in quality for you to produce a quality product. Similarly, the BCP henceforth has to focus on the BCP of the suppliers and the vendors as well, whoever are supplying products and services to this particular company. It is not to say that this factor is not being considered right now. Probably some of the companies, they do so. However, this becomes an essential part and an enhanced part of it that they need to focus on that. The second bigger realization is that you also need to know that the market and the customer needs to exist for you to function. For example, today, the oil refineries around the world, around the OPEC countries and whoever are concerned, they might be working full. I mean, there is no fault with them. There is nothing wrong with them, but they cannot produce today because the world is full of oil. There is no aircraft flying. There are no automobiles flying. There is the whole traffic. It stands still everywhere. There is no consumption of oil. In such a scenario, even if your BCP, your processes are excellent as an oil refinery, you cannot produce. So on a larger scale, the BCP here should not only focus on the supplier and the vendor, but also on the market and the customer for you to function very well. And another point about this crisis is that the crisis We don't know how long it lasts. So the BCP should also probably have one factor that whenever a crisis comes, the duration of the crisis will determine the strategies on the way forward. If it's a midterm crisis of anywhere between 3 to 6 months, there could be probably one strategy to deal with. And if the crisis is going to be a long term, say 1 year to 3 years beyond, then probably the strategies could be different. Now, just to touch upon the impact of the COVID-19 in the current scenario, as we all know, the biggest hit, I mean, everything has been affected in one way or other. There is no sector which has probably been unaffected by COVID-19, but let us list only some 3-4 top ones. The first is the aviation sector. It will take long time. Long time when we say it will be somewhere around 2 to 3 years for the airlines to start breaking even or even generating profits or whatsoever, because there'll be a kind of a fear in the people to fly. I mean, you would not be comfortable having practiced social distancing with masks and all for so many days. Suddenly, if you have to sit in a plane with 180 strangers, I know you will be not very comfortable. Some people may be comfortable, some may not be. But that particular apprehension may drive people not to travel. So this could be one. AV sector is one. Already companies, Virgin Australia has already, I think, filed for bankruptcy, and some more are in the pipeline. The tourism sector is also one which is going to be affected. People would not like to travel in these next 2 to 3 years time. So tourism sector, and when we say tourism sector, it is everything that is associated with the tourism. It is the companies which plan for the tours. It is the local infrastructure, local logistics at the tourism places. The tour guides, the shops there, the hotels, the lodges, and everything, whatever is there, the shops, particularly the gifts, souvenirs, and all these things. The entire supply chain will be affected with this. The hotels, the hotel industry across will be affected, because when people don't travel, the occupancy in hotels, which is already low, will continue to be low for some more time. It may be around maybe 2-3 years, as we said again. And the fourth big sector, which probably may take a big hit, is the events management. So the big auditoriums, the big convention centers, the big conference halls, which earlier people used to take pride in to host events there, probably they may not happen with so much of enthusiasm in the next few months, at least, when people would be more comfortable doing something like what we are doing right now. After having talked about on a mega scale, there are even some small changes happening in the day-to-day lives of the people which are changing their habits. And this may have an impact on the business as well. Like, for example, first thing is the groceries. The simple act of buying groceries. We all buy groceries on a regular basis. This is one of the consumables that we all buy. But how we buy it, now that the shops are closed and we have tested the home delivery, it may come as a surprise that there are, say, 50% of the people who never tried any home delivery before. And now that they have tried it, they find a lot of benefits in this. They find that they don't need to go to in a traffic and go for searching for a parking and go through the crowds there, and simply just order something on the computer or in your mobile, and then you get the items delivered to your doorstep. What can be better than this? So some people may prefer to stick with the home delivery options for the groceries, which will have a big impact on the existing supermarkets and the hypermarkets. So it's like a Walmart versus Amazon or something of that sort. And while the world is talking about recession and unemployment and job losses, it may be a surprise for some to know that Amazon in US is acting for 100,000 people. It says that please do come. I have vacancies for 100,000 delivery boys, and I have orders which I cannot cope with. So this is one. On a very even smaller thing, saloons. For example, saloons are one of the points which are very susceptible for the spread of the virus. So it may come as a surprise again that there are 30% of people worldwide today who prefer to do the haircut by their own, by using the trimmers and the scissors and all that. Now this number may grow in future because of the necessity, because of the forced condition. They may find benefits in this and they will say, okay, fine, I stick with this. Even the dining options. Earlier, people used to take pleasure in going to hotels or restaurants with families on weekends and in crowded places and all, but that also come as a change. And these are all the small habits of people which will change the industry as such on a larger scale. So overall, in the next 3 years, there is going to be a very cautious outlook of all the organizations. It's not one or two, but every organization, when they make plans, they are going to surely ensure that they are not very over optimistic or over enthusiastic in their projections of how to go forward. However, everything is not so gloomy in this scenario. There are some things which are great, some things which are good also, and let us talk about them for a while. The emerging fields. Now, every challenge brings equal opportunities as well. There is no crisis. There is always an opportunity at the end of the crisis. So there are some fields which are going to shine, which are going to really come up in a big way after the crisis is over, whenever it gets over. And the first one is the everything that is to be done with the home, which is the home entertainment, home education, home deliveries, and these are the fields which are going to really go very high. For example, the home entertainment, people may not prefer to go to the theaters anymore for some time. The cautious approach, they would like to see the series. In fact, there is a record jump in the viewership on all the web series and the internet usage since the COVID-19 lockdowns in various parts of the world has started. So the inclination to watch the entertainment segment instead of going outside is probably on the rise. The schools, home education is something which is very big. It is going to grow exponentially in the coming days. Even from the primary school to the senior, I mean the graduation and post-graduation level, now everyone is learning on the e-learning basis. They are all sitting in front of computer and distance education has started now. So there could be entrepreneurs, a team of entrepreneurs who develop this as a parallel field, and then they cash in on this, on the current trend, and say that we provide you this kind of mechanism where you just need to sit in home and we'll give you the certificates and the degrees and all. And probably that will catch on a very large scale. On the other side, there is the protective equipment manufacturer, the personal protective equipment manufacturer like the mask, the gloves, and the specialized clothing. These industry will be very much in demand. The thermal cameras, of course, the thermal cameras will be in demand because they are used everywhere, in factories at all. Now, every factory, industries are giving this thermal camera to the security and asking a neighbor which walks in to have this kind of thing. Don't be surprised if in the malls in the coming days, there will be initially a security guard holding a thermal camera, but subsequently, when the sophistication goes high, there could be automated thermal sensors in the entrances where someone in the control room can actually see every person walking, what is the temperature, and then take appropriate action based on that. The disinfection services, this is something which is going to come up in a big way because these services will be required for a long time to come. The face recognition, some of the cities in the Asian cities like Singapore and Hong Kong, they have successfully used the face recognition cameras to find out a COVID suspect where all he has traveled in the last 14 days by using the face recognition. They fed in the parameters of the person in the camera and then they matched it with their record, found out, and that way they were able to control it and contain it much faster. So similarly, even this will happen and the face recognition will be used in a big way, the testing kits and all, of course. The digital transformation as such in a big way is going to happen. And today morning, I happened to come across a very good joke on that. It says that a question is asked whether who is more responsible in your organization for the digital transformation to happen, whether it is CEO or the CTO. And the answer is COVID. COVID-19 has forced. So it has forced all the people to now go for digital transformation. It was already happening, but now it will happen on a much faster way. The application of artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to be in a big way for the current COVID. As we are all talking, we are all probably not into the data part of it as intensely as there are teams which are working. And there is a huge exercise currently happening as we are in the COVID itself, where the data is being gathered about at the temperature and the spread of the virus. The spread of the virus versus the age group of the people, the spread of the virus versus the habits of the people. And these kind of data will give a great algorithm for the next epidemic to come out with a sure shot way to contain it with a much lesser damage. So this is something that is going to happen. And in manufacturing industry, there will be use of more robots. They will use all the routine activities will be performed by the robots, and there will be less of manpower in the coming days. There will be new range of products, which is the smart distancing we call. Earlier, now we are called social distancing. That will very soon give away to something called smart distancing, where the lift, you will not press the lift button with your hand, but there will be buttons at the bottom on the floor, which you will press with your shoes, whichever floor at all, at the public taps, and the dispenser, the soap dispensers and all. So wherever there is a potential spread of virus, touch points are there, they will be all made contact free by the smart distancing techniques. And there will be sanitized DR sites. For example, there is something called a disaster recovery site currently, which IT people would probably more, where the IT, if the server goes down, there is a parallel server on a real-time basis which is updated, which will be immediately up and running. So probably the organizations will think it worthwhile to keep some kind of sanitized sites ready where the top critical people, bosses of the company, the managers, the leaders, they will immediately assemble and then they will start operating from there till the situation becomes normal. So this is one part. And the last slide, the last part of it is about the corporate lessons that we learn from this. The lessons are, one is that the old wisdom always plays high, which is, for example, earlier in all the Fords, you had one escape route. Always there is a way to go up and down and all, and there is one escape route out in emergency. So all the organizations, they need to keep one escape route in their BCP. It is only meant for survival and sustenance. It is not meant for anything else. It is only to be used in these kind of dire emergencies where the only objective is to survive for another day. This will be required. And then the markets, people will all study the markets, whether the markets are changing. Any industry where markets are completely changing from term, they may have to probably think about their continuation in the same business line. The globalization will take a hit, of course, because no more dependence on other countries, and it's a huge risk, as has been found right now. Some countries which are under controversy, people would not like to buy from those countries anymore or depend on them for anything. The BCP will include two important things hereafter. One is the emotional support. There is a lot of employees, the workforce who are currently under lockdown, who have never experienced sitting in house for weeks together. There is a trauma going on. They are not really focusing. They are under kind of emotional turmoil. So the HR departments probably will have some kind of a team which will immediately provide emotional support to all the employees, because employees are the resources. They work for the company. They give the output to the company. So some kind of a backup support team, which is emotionally qualified to give emotional support, will be always kept in ICT part of it. And the second one is a team from IT which will have the remote working ramp up at a short notice. They will really gear up for this. The last 2 points, this is a defining moment for the century, of the century. We have never experienced this before, and probably, hopefully, we do not experience this again. So when there is a reset button for the whole world is being reset right now. So let us all aspire that we make a new beginning, we take a stock of our current existing situation, of what we have, what we don't have, what we need to have. Let us review our objectives and then march forward with the confidence for a better day. Over to you, Khalid.
Thank you, Suhas. This was very insightful. We move on with the next session with Michael Lawrence. Michael will tackle the situation of projects and running a site during COVID-19. I'm sure this is interesting for a lot of you. He will talk us through the most recent restrictions and regulations that have impacted works on site, including health and safety measures, and its impact on resources and potential disruption of works. Over to you, Michael.
Okay, thank you very much, Khalid. So just let me share my screen now here. Right, so hopefully you can all see that. As Khalil said, I'm going to take you through the situation on site and running your site during the times of COVID. I'm going to be looking at my particular experience here in the UAE. I have been fortunate enough to be on both sides of the fence here in terms of representing a number of contractors and looking at the problem from their point of view, as well as being acting as the engineer on site, so and responding to contractors' letters. So I've got a good overall view of what's been happening and the problems that contractors and employers have been facing. So just let me take you to my first slide. What I'm going to do actually is take you through what's been happening in the UAE. I think more or less what's been happening in the UAE is pretty similar as to what's been happening in other countries around the world. It's just perhaps that we're behind or ahead of the curve of some other countries. And pretty much what I see in construction in other jurisdictions, construction's all been considered to be a protected sector. And so what I've seen is both here in the UAE and in other jurisdictions, construction has kept going, or perhaps in other places it's been the last activity to stop and then the first activity to get going again. So of course, the first thing that we had was before it reached our shores. And here in the UAE, we had the first case on the 29th of January, which was the first case we had here. But there were already issues about materials coming in from overseas. And the first letters started to come in from contractors, particularly saying about manufacturers based in China initially, a lot of lift manufacturers and people like that. Then it moved on to Europe and delays from Europe. The municipalities pretty soon in the UAE started issuing directives to the construction sites to increase the cleaning both on the site and in the labour camps, to reduce the density on the labour on the buses, to make sure that people were practicing social distancing on the buses. And then we started to hear initially here in the UAE it wasn't mandatory, it was recommended that you didn't travel out of the UAE, but that immediately then brought problems in terms of if anybody had people coming in to approve mock-ups, or for staff or labour coming in, and likewise anybody wanting to travel out of the country for factory inspections and things like that. These sort of things started to be impacted. On the 23rd of February here in the UAE, we came to sort of the lockdown situation pretty much, which was not 100%. There was 20% recommended in key offices and so on. But the construction sector was exempt. But there was a bit of confusion at the beginning as to what was required in terms of the construction sector, whether they were affected or not. There then came a little bit later a 3-day disinfection program over the weekend, where all activities were stopped for 1 weekend while disinfection was carried out. That was 3 days during the night times, where no movement could take place, and then that was extended to be daily on the night during the night time. Then by the end of March, we had one area in Dubai, the Al Ras area, which was completely locked down 100%. There were evidently some cases there, and that area was locked down, which meant that if you had supplies coming in from that area, then you had a problem. So moving into April, the disinfection drive was extended to 24 hours, and during the disinfection, nobody could move. In Dubai, by the 5th of April, we had move permits, which meant that you couldn't go out unless you had a permit on your phone from the police. And again, that didn't apply to construction activities, but it had some initial impact on the movement of contractors and suppliers. Then later, by mid-April, they banned the movement of labour from one emirate to another. This happened in Abu Dhabi first, I think on the 11th of April, and then by the 14th it applied to Dubai as well, and Sharjah and so on. So this has had a huge impact because a lot of labour does move from one emirate to another, having the accommodation in one emirate and coming in. So by the end of April, we started to get the guidelines and protocols issued for a limited opening up. And that has in fact started in Dubai on the 24th of April. We're now in a process where things are starting to lift up. So the reason that the opening up's happening, I mean, this is the situation in the UAE, which, although alarming, is probably by international standards relatively, relatively mild, in that there's not been an exponential increase. You can see, although there's a lot of cases, it's now steadied at about 500 cases a day, new cases, and the recoveries are running at about 100 a day. So it's not really taken off in exponential manner in the UAE, and I think that the measures to that extent have worked well. So what's all this meant on site? Well, the disinfection of site offices, welfare areas, labour, that's just, there's been some additional cost there and so on. The labour transportation being reduced has meant that obviously instead of having one bus now, you need 3 or 4 for the same number of labourers. You either have to bring in more buses, or you have to have shifts for the workers, which is disrupting the activities on site. Labourers are, once they arrive to site, they can only stay in the site. They're not allowed outside the bounds of the site. And we've had temperature testing of labour entering site, leaving site, which again is taking time and causing delay. On site, we're now in a situation where throughout this crisis, we have to apply social distancing. And what that means in the site offices is that we've looked at reducing the load in the site offices by trying to get some people to work from home. But obviously, site staff are there because they have to be on the site. So it's limited effectiveness, but there are 1 or 2 people, some people you can make work from site, or you can make come in just for inspections and visits and try to reduce the load of the site staff. And in terms of the site itself, then it's all about trying to stagger the people coming in to eat and moving through the man lifts and so on, so that you don't have a big load of people. On site, we've, as in most places, we've now embraced working from home where it's possible, and the use of virtual meetings and so on. And I think the use of virtual meetings in particular is a legacy which will be with us, because it's proved very effective on site when people come for once a week for meetings, and they come from all over. It's proved to be very, very effective. We're in a situation, we weren't actually in the early stages of the outbreak, but it's now compulsory on site to use masks and gloves. And this is a particular worry now that the temperature is starting to rise in the UAE, when Labour's already having to wear eye protection as well, safety boots, overalls, hats, and we're going to start to get into the high temperatures. So enforcing this additional PPE requirement is going to be a challenge. In a few cases, a few sites I've been involved with, we have had some isolated cases, which is tended to be among the labour. And this has meant that in some cases, you may have 1 or 2 cases in a block of 100 workers, but you've got to have the whole 100 workers in isolation for a period of time. You've got to have them all tested. Also, if you're unfortunate enough to be in a case, as we have on 1 or 2 of the sites, where you've got people that have proved positive on site, then you're then into tracking the primary contacts of that person's on site. And you may be, for example, an MEP contractor on site and have no positive cases and no problems with your own labour. But if you're working with a fit-out contractor and they've had 1 case, then you suddenly find that you have to withdraw your labour from site as a precautionary measure, have them tested, etc. So all of this causes disruption. So, the challenge in all of this has been to try to record all of these impacts and effects in terms of later on. The challenge will be to convert this into what has this had in terms of impact of time and cost on the production on site. And this is going to be quite a difficult exercise, and will rely really on the on how good your records have been throughout all of this, and recording all of these different things which have happened, when they've happened, and notifying the engineer accordingly. Because I've seen many cases where contractors have written in and said, you know, we've got COVID-19, it's more force majeure, we need an extension of time. Well, unfortunately, you know, you need to prove, as in anything else, what the cause of the delay is, exactly what the cause of the delay is, and what the effect of that has been. Back it up with substantiation, the official records from the authorities, and then the cost and the time associated with it. So with that, I shall move back to Khalid, who will pass us on to our next speaker.
Thank you, Michael, for this great presentation. I think the global crisis has significantly affected the situation on site, especially in international projects. But projects teams are adapting, and they continue to respond to new regulations affecting resources and the workforce. We conclude our last session with Niki Dubranu. Niki will address a dear topic to us all, and that is the individual's role in businesses during global crisis. The individual is suffering like any other business, and also perhaps as a direct result of other businesses suffering from this crisis. Niki will talk us through the advantage of continuing professional development and further education in times of crisis, and the role of organizations in the self-improvement of its employees. On to you, Niki.
Thank you very much, Halil. I hope you can all hear me. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are across the globe. We were told by DMG that there's a lot of people who logged on to this session. Just a question for everybody, whether employees, not employed, or employers. And I want you to be very honest with the answer, not with myself or anyone else, but with yourselves. It goes like this: everyone you meet always asks you if you have a career, have a house, or are married, as if life was some kind of grocery list. But nobody asks if you are happy. And I think this is very important. Just think about it. Don't give me any answer in the chat box. Just give yourself an answer by conducting the coming years. Coming back to the topic of this session, I think what's important for employers, for companies, businesses, is how they treat their staff during the last few weeks, how they treat them. I found this on the internet. I don't have the author, but it says how you treat people during tough times says more about you than how you treat them in good times. And I'm thinking of an interview in a few months' time, or in the coming years, where a candidate will ask the potential employer how they treated their staff during this time. Did they fire everybody, or did they try to work with them, maybe find some middle ground to go through this? There's a number of dimensions I want to bring to your attention, especially if you own a company, or if you're in a management position. The physical one, and this is relating to the flexible work arrangements that you need to ensure. Don't have the mentality that people need to be available at any time just because they're online. I think that's a failed assumption. Financial, again, consider maybe on-demand pay as a way to help employees manage the financial stresses they're going through. This is very important. Some people have been put on unpaid leave, some on paid leave. Some don't have a job at all. So just make sure you can still look after some people that are still with you in your payroll. The developmental aspect, this relates to the virtual development opportunities. There's a number of courses that I'll touch upon a bit later. Just make sure your employees are also getting training. They're getting better and better, continuous improvement. And the last one, which I think is the most important one, is relating to the emotional dimension, where you need to care. You need to really care. And this is it. If you do nothing else, just love the people that you work with or you worked with. We must be people-oriented generally, but maybe more now more than ever. This is something I come across from social media. My wife shared this with me, and I want to walk you quickly through it. It's a text from the internet without any author, which says we are not in the same boat. For people who don't have access to the computer and are looking at this or listening to this on the phone, I'm going to read quickly through it. It goes like this. We are in the same storm, but not in the same boat. Your ship may be shipwrecked and mine not be, or vice versa. For some, quarantine is optimal, a moment of reflection, reconnection, very easy in flip-flops with a cocktail or coffee. For others, this is a desperate financial or family crisis. For some that live alone, they're facing endless loneliness, while for others, it is peace, rest, and time with their relatives. Financial stimuli made it that some are actually bringing in more money than they used to in their households, and others are working more hours for less money due to pay cuts or loss in sales. Some are at home spending 2-3 hours a day helping their children with the e-learning, and others are doing so on top of a 10-12 hour workday. Some have experienced the near death of the virus, some have already lost someone from it, and some are not sure if their loved ones are going to make it. Others don't believe this is a big deal at all. So friends, we are not in the same boat. We are going through a time when our perceptions and needs are completely different. Each of us will emerge in our own way from this storm. It is very important to see beyond what is seen at first glance, not just looking, but actually seeing. We are all on different ships during the storm, experiencing a very different journey. Now, moving into the digital disruption, and this is something that Suhas touched upon a bit earlier. This is a joke against social media. Who led the digital transformation of your company? And as he pointed out, it's more relating to the current circumstances than actual push from inside the company, either top or bottom led. Digital disruption is very important, and this is something we need to think about more and more. And in the future, we spoke about transportation, and Suhas reminded me I need to look after our summer plans and maybe cancel some of those flights. Things such as automated homes and how important they'll be in the future, big data and BIM, wearable technologies. I'm sure most of you use some sort of smart devices. Blockchain, this is an interesting one because Michael, who's a panelist on this session, delivered recently a presentation for the CIOB in relation to blockchain and buildings and how blockchain technology can assist within a construction context. Virtual assistants, I'm sure some of you or maybe most of you are using Siri or Alexa or Cortana, Galaxy, and so on. So it's again important, maybe in the future we'll use them more and more. Instead of writing, taking notes, we can put some notes there. Social media, as always, very important. It can help you win elections if you play it the right way. Artificial intelligence, 3D printing, again, important aspects relating to digital disruption. Now, in terms of your goals, this is something that I want you to be smart with. I want you to set goals and to be smart about how you set them. An example of a project brief that is not smart at all would be, can you please bake my sweet little daughter a birthday cake? And the perception generally is something along these lines, where you have a cake with Elsa and cartoon characters and a sweet little girl. Now, the reality in this case, and I ask you to embrace diversity and inclusion, is this. So the objective, the project brief, was not smart at all. It was not specific. It was not measurable, achievable, realistic, or timely. And to make it smart, the brief should have said, can you please, by the day after tomorrow, bake for my daughter a black Gothic skull birthday cake for herself and her 2 friends? Again, if you set goals to become a member of a certain institute or to get a certain certification or to get a university degree or a master's or a doctorate, just make sure you put some timelines to it and you define that as a SMART goal. In terms of CPD or continuing professional development, this is something I ask everybody to do, and I'm usually volunteering for all kinds of sessions and seminars where I like to share knowledge with with all individuals. This is from the Chartered Institute of Personal and Development in the UK. The definition is that it's a combination of approaches, ideas, and techniques that help you manage your own learning and growth. The focus of CPD is firmly on results, the benefits that professional development can bring you in the real world. Perhaps the most important message is that one size does not fit all. Wherever you are in your career now, and wherever you want, whatever you want to achieve, your CPD should be exactly that, yours. Now, moving to the actual part of the CPD and how you can realize this continuing professional development is maybe by looking at further education, maybe certifications, or becoming a member of some associations. A discussion between the CFO and the CEO would be what happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave us. And the CEO responds, what happens if we don't and they stay? So it's very important as a business to have people that are experts in the field and they continuously improve. Some ideas for you to look into if you maybe don't have a university degree and you've always wanted to get one, maybe now it's the perfect time to do that, or a postgraduate certificate and so on, master's degree, doctorate. If you want a certification, there's a number of them out there. I think that this is a very short list. You can become an ISO auditor. You can do a course on Primavera, or become proficient in the use of business information, building information modeling as a delivering environment, maybe sustainability. And then what I wanted to note are a number of memberships and charterships from different institutes and associations. Some of them are local here in the UAE, like the Emirates Green Building Council. Before joining this session, I watched a webinar by Emirates Green Building Council, where they talked about net zero carbon building commitment. It's very important. Then previously I said the CIIB organized a session on blockchain. Later today, I have a session with the RICS about facilities management and procurement for facilities managers. A number of us in the panel here are members of various institutes, amongst which also the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. Maybe it's a good time now to learn more and to become a member of these. They will help you with your progression and will be a good tool in your CV. Maybe it'll make it more attractive. Some free resources that you can find online: the CIOB Academy, Harvard University in the US, they have a lot of them, a lot of free courses, some of them on soft skills, which I think will become more and more important the more time we spend at home and the more we are online. Webinars in market intelligence such as this one, panel discussions, and so on. Knowledge is power, but in order to make it true power, we need to also take an action with it. So just learning without any logic is not good. You don't need to know everything. Nobody knows everything. And whatever you know, you need to be able to put that into action. So you transform it into power. The role of organization and self-improvement of employees, there's a number of dimensions I wanted to cover here. But businesses play an essential role in motivating employees to continuously improve. And the idea here is for them to accept bigger challenges and to lead from the front. There's a number of things which are done wrong in companies. Training, for example, sending an email and expecting all your employees to attend training programs willingly is foolishness, because they need to benefit from that training, to see the benefit. Then self-sufficiency, another aspect. Make your employees self-dependent. Let them experience more and let them fail more often, because that's how they learn better. Just trying the same thing over and over again and not trying to innovate does not help. Motivate, this is important. You need to create a healthy environment at the workplace where employees motivate each other to constantly upgrade their knowledge and maybe share that with their peers. Promote, of course, people who invest in them, who constantly upgrade their knowledge, they need to be promoted. If they're competent in what they do, they need to be promoted. And lastly, review. This is, you need to review your employees on a regular basis, because this will also inform the training needs. Maybe they're very strong on one aspect of the work they're doing, but maybe not as strong on the other aspects. So my recommendation for you to conclude this would be, don't be the same, be better. And I have a few points here. Reject materialism. This is my first lesson for you. The more things you want, the more money you need, and your cost of breathing will go up. And then you spend a lot of your resources paying others. Second one is be a minimalist. Now, you don't need to cut on everything down by 15 to 15 items, but be wary of your, when your things become a distraction. So if they distract you from what you're planning to do, you need to review also your spending habits. Live where you thrive. This is a good one, and maybe it can be your hometown or a foreign country or a different place every month. Now, without the note on the travel and the restrictions, my question in this case would be, what's holding you back from living there now? The next dimension would be maximize the pursuit of curiosity. Pursuing this will lead you to a place no one else can go. Trust that the dots will connect. You will be amazed. Face your fears. Second last, rejection and death are used against us every day. They are manipulated to make you want material things and take the safe route always. Block out the distractions. They just want your attention, and they don't care at what cost. So don't give it to them. Don't give that attention to them. Be mindful of also of your social media habits. And if you manage to do that, please let me know how. And I want you to, above all, to be happy as the start of this presentation. I'm gonna end with a slide from Emma Paxton in the UK. This will not be forever. Thank you very much, and over back to you, Halil.
Thank you very much, Nikki, for this insightful presentation. I can already see that there's quite a large number of questions in the chat box. Thank you all for your interest in our panelists' discussion. I think we have a couple of minutes to allow the panelists to address some of the questions. I have one, I think, Suhas, you're the best person to answer this question. And it goes like this: how would small and medium scale businesses cope in Africa during this COVID-19 period, especially with the lockdown been experienced in most countries? Also, since most small businesses actually rely on daily output to survive. Suhas, if you can unmute yourself so we can hear you. Thank you.
Sorry, my apologies. Okay, sorry. This question is actually relevant not just for Africa but for all over the world, where the medium and the small scale industries, they really face the brunt of it. But then the situation is a question of survival. The strategy, the only strategy which can sail everyone through in this kind of crisis is the survival strategy. So the strategy for the MSME, not only in Africa, all of the one is to anticipate this problem. Second is to have a robust business continuity plan which caters for this. The third is to seek bailout packages from the government and the banks, and the management should take out all its resources, all reserves, whatever they have. They can't keep it for some day in future. This is the day when they need to survive. So that is the one that they can do, and then stop all their expenditure as much as possible. No question of any profitability and all. If they survive, tomorrow they exist. So this is what should be the strategy. It's only about the survival. So seek help from every quarter and then sustain for the next day.
Thank you, Suhas, very much for your answer. I think I have another one for Michael, and this is about a topic that is dear for us all. How can we deal with delay in payments for all supplies, especially given that no one is in office, especially accounts team who are probably working remotely. If you have anything to say about this, Michael, please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Khalid. I think, particularly in this region anyway, trying to deal with delay of payment is something which is a common problem at the best of times. The current circumstances, of course, just exacerbate that normal situation, and it's all about communication and making contact with your suppliers and talking to them, and likewise your banks, because you will need to be in contact with your banks. And certainly the banks, I can see, have put measures in place to alleviate some of the pain in terms of loans and etc. here in this jurisdiction, and other jurisdictions even more so. So it's a question of communicating with them and then putting in measures to some sort of guarantees. There are always guarantees you can put in place in place of cash payments to payment plans and so on, secured by agreements or backed by bank instruments.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going through the list, and I think I have one for Nikki. What is the future regarding working remotely, and do you think this will affect employability in the future?
Yeah, I think this is something we always wanted, to spend more time at home. But when we got to it, some of us complained about the posture and some backaches and problems. But I think some people just think about the previous generations, which waited until they retired to be able to spend more time with the family and to be always at home. Now, being always at home, it doesn't mean you don't deliver anything for your company or for the projects you're assigned to, but it means it gives you this. You're not spending the time to get to work. You're always around the house, and as a matter of fact, the CEO of the company I work for said maybe in the future a test will be run, maybe having every month a day in which we work from home. This will also help with the sustainability. But in terms of employability, I can tell you from my experience that I had a number of interviews in the last few weeks with candidates, potential candidates. And for me, I would give the same feedback after seeing a candidate online or seeing a candidate in person. So I don't think it's maybe traditionally it's better to meet people. It's good to shake hands, or it was good to shake hands, maybe not so much anymore. But I think the future is bright, and just think about it positively. And again, back to the same topic, just be happy.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Nikki. I think we have a couple of more minutes, or 1 minute, for one more question. And this is for Suhas. How to make business continuity plans effective, as we do not know what situation will come in the future, like COVID-19, and the fact that all business continuity plans have failed against the current COVID-19. I think the first hunch in response to that is the fact that there is no other precedent for COVID-19, at least in recent history. But please, Suhas, if you have any details you would like to give us, any insights, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. It's as I mentioned in one part of my presentation, the AI, the artificial intelligence, and the machine learning teams all over the world are currently working overtime to gather all the data. In fact, next time when such an epidemic happens, I'm sure the world is more prepared, because every data about how it is spreading, whom it is affecting, which industries are getting affected, and the way it is spreading. In fact, the pharmaceutical industry, the clinic, the medicine industry, they are also analyzing it in a much detail, how much time it takes to spread, and what is the recovery time, and what kind of medicines and all. So I'm sure all this information, as we all know, the data or the data engineering, or the data field itself, is going to really be very useful in this particular context. It was going to be used in other fields, but now the whole data management or the data engineering, is going to be used for this purpose. And when next time such a thing happens, I'm sure, and with very reasonable, optimistic confidence, I say that the world will be better prepared to deal with such epidemics because of the precedent that has happened and the lessons that have been learned from this. And then such robust business continuity plans would be already in place for all the various industries that are affected so that they can deal with it in a more proper manner.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Suhas. All right, I think our time is up. Many thanks to all the participants for attending, and certainly many thanks to our panelists for their insightful interventions. I hope you have enjoyed this webinar. In the meantime, please stay safe and well. Back to you, Eleni.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all very much for your time. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Just to let all attendees know that we will be sending the recording of this webinar and the presentations to everyone via email. So just check your inbox in a couple of days. Thank you very much.